Ethan had always been fascinated by the stars. Even as a child, he would lie on the roof of his small home in the quiet town of Cedar Creek and watch the night sky, imagining the worlds that might exist beyond the reach of human eyes. Now, at 28, he was no longer just a dreamer. He was an engineer aboard the human diplomatic ship Aurora, traveling to the edge of alien-controlled space. It was a place few humans had ever visited, and fewer still returned from without scars, physical or emotional. The mission was simple in theory: explore, observe, and report. But as Ethan knew, nothing in life that involved aliens was ever simple. His task was to maintain the equipment and help analyze new technology the human crew might encounter. It was work he loved, but it left him restless. He was used to routine repairs, not the kind of danger that lurked beyond the human borders. Still, he had a sense of curiosity that refused to be tamed, and it often led him into situations that most humans would avoid. One evening, the Aurora hovered near a small, rocky planet at the edge of the Orvax sector. The planet looked lifeless from orbit, a dull gray mass surrounded by swirling clouds of red dust. The sensors picked up faint energy signatures, unlike anything Ethan had seen before. Captain Morgan, the commanding officer, had ordered a small team to investigate. Ethan had been chosen to accompany them, mostly because of his technical skills and quick thinking under pressure. He suspected there might be more to the mission than Morgan was willing to say, but that was often the way with command. The landing was rough. The shuttle shook violently as it pierced the planet's thin atmosphere. Ethan gripped the side rail, trying to steady his nerves. The surface was barren, filled with jagged rocks and deep crevices. A faint wind blew, carrying a strange metallic scent that made him uneasy. He glanced at the other team members, Lara, a field biologist, and Sam, a security officer. Both were focused, but Ethan could see the tension in their movements. "This place feels wrong," Lara whispered, scanning the rocky horizon. "It's too quiet." "Quiet is better than noisy," Sam muttered. His hand rested near his blaster. "At least if something attacks, we'll see it coming." Ethan adjusted his gear and followed the group. His mind, however, was drawn to the faint energy signals they had detected. Whoever or whatever was producing them, it was advanced. More advanced than humans had ever encountered. As they moved closer to the source, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Small stones rolled down the slopes of the rocky hills. Ethan paused and looked around. The energy readings were increasing. Whatever it wasn't natural. Suddenly, a flash of violet light streaked across the sky. Ethan barely had time to react before a figure appeared, standing on a ridge above them. At first, he thought it was another member of his team, but the figure moved with a grace that no human could match. The light around her made it difficult to see clearly, but Ethan could make out her shape. She was humanoid, yes, but not human. Her skin had a soft, glowing hue, and her eyes were a deep violet that seemed to shine even in the dim light. The team froze. Sam reached for his weapon, but Ethan grabbed his arm. "Wait. Don't make the first move," he whispered. The figure tilted her head, observing them. Ethan felt a strange pull, as if the violet-eyed alien could see straight into his mind. He had never felt anything like it before. There was curiosity in her gaze, but also caution. Neither side made a move. Finally, she spoke not in words Ethan could understand, but in a melodic tone that somehow conveyed meaning. It was as if her voice was not just sound, but emotion itself. Ethan felt a message form in his mind. "I am not your enemy. Do not hurt me." He swallowed hard. She's trying to communicate," he said quietly to Lara and Sam. Lara nodded, eyes wide. "I think she's alone. No weapons. No guards." Ethan took a small step forward, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "We don't want to hurt you," he said aloud, unsure if she could understand his words. The alien girl's eyes narrowed slightly, then softened. She extended her hand, and a faint glow spread from her fingertips. Ethan felt a warmth in the air, a vibration in his chest that was not from the planet. Slowly, cautiously, he mirrored her gesture, holding out his hand. When their fingers almost touched, a surge of energy ran through him, not painful, but overwhelming. He saw images flash in his mind. Strange cities floating in the sky, ships moving silently between stars, and creatures with forms that seemed impossible. He realized she was showing him her world, not with words, but with thought. Lara gasped. "Ethan, are you okay?" He shook his head, overwhelmed. I think she's showing me her home." The alien girl lowered her hand and took a step back. Ethan felt a strange sadness wash over him. He wanted to speak, to ask questions, but the words caught in his throat. He didn't understand how she had done it, but he felt connected to her in a way that made everything else fade. Before he could react further, a loud rumble echoed across the valley. Rocks tumbled from the cliffs, and the team instinctively moved to avoid falling debris. Ethan looked up and saw a group of alien patrol ships descending from the sky, sleek and dark, their weapons aimed at the group. "Run!" Sam shouted, drawing his blaster. Ethan grabbed Lara's arm, and they sprinted toward a nearby ridge. The patrol ships fired, and beams of energy scorched the ground behind them. Ethan felt a strange sense of urgency. He couldn't leave the alien girl behind. She was part of whatever had drawn them here. "Leora," he called, remembering the name that had formed in his mind when he first connected with her. "Come with us. Tipra, come with us." The alien girl hesitated, then ran. Her movements were almost faster than Ethan could follow, but he kept pace, adrenaline pushing him forward. They reached a narrow canyon, the walls rising high on either side. The patrol ships were slowing their approach, unable to navigate the terrain as quickly. Ethan risked a glance at Leora. She was running beside him, and for a moment, their eyes met. There was trust there, but also fear. He realized that despite the danger, they were forming a bond, something neither human nor alien had anticipated. They found a small cave hidden behind a jagged rock formation. Inside, the air was cool and still. Ethan collapsed to the ground, breathing heavily. Leora stood a few feet away, watching him. She did not speak, but Ethan felt her thoughts brushing against his mind. "You saved me. That makes you different." He nodded, unsure how to respond. I don't know what happens next," he said, "but we'll figure it out. Together." Leora's violet eyes softened, and for the first time, she touched his arm not with energy, but with a gentle, physical contact. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him. It was more than relief or excitement. It was something new, something dangerous. He knew that forming a connection with her could change everything, not just for them, but for both their worlds. Outside, the rumble of patrol ships faded as they moved on, unable to find the cave. Ethan and Leora sat in silence, letting the tension pass. He wanted to ask her questions about her world, her abilities, her people. But he also wanted to savor this moment. Somehow, amidst fear and uncertainty, they had found a connection. "Can you understand me?" Ethan asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. She tilted her head, and he felt her thoughts in his mind. "Yes, I understand. You are not like the others." Ethan felt a smile spread across his face. "I'm glad," he said softly, "because I think we need each other." "Ah," Leora's eyes shimmered, and she nodded. In that silent agreement, Ethan felt hope and danger. Their bond was real, but fragile. If anyone discovered it, it could lead to consequences neither of them could control. And yet, for the first time in his life, Ethan felt truly alive. They spent the rest of the night in the cave, taking turns keeping watch. Ethan tried to learn more about Leora, about her world, about why she had been alone on this planet. She communicated in images and feelings, showing him glimpses of a world filled with floating cities, crystal forests, and skies lit with unfamiliar stars. He learned that her people were advanced and proud and wary of humans. By dawn, Ethan realized that their encounter had changed him. He had always known humans were explorers, thinkers, dreamers. But standing beside Leora, he understood something deeper. Humans were also capable of connection, of trust, even with beings vastly different from themselves. And that connection, he feared, might not just change his life, it could change the fate of both their species. As the sun rose over the jagged horizon, Ethan and Leora stepped out of the cave, knowing they had to move before anyone discovered them. The world outside was dangerous, full of unknown threats, but they faced it together. And for the first time, Ethan felt the weight of responsibility, not as a burden, but as a challenge he was ready to meet. Somewhere in the distance, the patrol ships searched. Somewhere beyond the stars, alliances were forming that neither humans nor aliens fully understood. And in the quiet space between fear and hope, Ethan realized that the most dangerous thing in the universe might not be a weapon or a ship, but love. And with that thought, he reached for Leora's hand. She took it. And together, they stepped into the unknown. The day after their escape from the patrol ships, Ethan and Leora moved carefully through the rocky terrain. The planet was quiet, almost too quiet. Wind swept across the jagged cliffs, carrying the sharp scent of minerals and something else Ethan could not identify. He walked slightly ahead, keeping an eye on the path, while Leora floated just above the ground, her movements graceful and almost effortless. Ethan could not stop thinking about what had happened in the cave. He had felt a connection with Leora that was unlike anything he had experienced with a human. It was as if their thoughts could touch each other without words. He knew it was dangerous. Humans and aliens rarely trusted one another, and if anyone discovered their bond, it could spark a war. But he could not ignore it. Leora looked at him with those deep violet eyes and seemed to sense his thoughts. "You fear for the future," she said in his mind. "I do," he replied silently. "But I also feel something I cannot explain." She nodded, though her expression was serious. "You must be careful. Our peoples are not ready to understand this connection." Ethan swallowed hard. He wanted to ask her to stay close, to never leave. But he did not. Instead, he focused on moving forward. He had always been practical, and he knew that survival came first. The pair found shelter in a small canyon that ran through the center of the rocky planet. It was narrow and winding, with walls high enough to hide them from patrol ships. Ethan checked the sensors on his suit. No movement nearby. For a moment, the world felt safe. Leora floated to a nearby rock and sat down, her legs folded beneath her. She watched Ethan carefully. "Why do humans always worry so much?" she asked in his mind, a faint smile forming on her face. Ethan chuckled quietly. "Because we have to. Danger is everywhere. Even now, I feel it. And I know others will be looking for us." She nodded. "Then we must be ready. But you also must learn to trust yourself. Not everything can be controlled." He looked at her, feeling a strange warmth. "You make it sound easy," he said softly. "It is not easy," she replied. "But fear will not help you survive. You must be stronger than your fear." Ethan realized she was right. He had always faced challenges before, but this was different. This was not just about surviving. It was about protecting someone he cared for, someone who mattered more to him than he had ever expected. They spent the day moving through the canyon, keeping low and avoiding open spaces. Leora's senses were far sharper than his, and she guided them around patrols and hidden dangers. Ethan tried to memorize the paths, but the terrain was unfamiliar, even to her. He could see the worry in her eyes as she scanned every cliff and crevice. As the sun began to set, the sky turned a deep red, and the rocks cast long shadows across the ground. They reached a plateau, overlooking a small valley. It was quiet, and Ethan could see strange plant life growing in patches. Some of it glowed faintly, casting a soft light across the valley floor. "Do you think anyone will come looking for us?" Ethan asked, breaking the silence. Leora shook her head. "Not yet. But soon. They will realize we are gone. Both your people and mine." He nodded, feeling a cold knot of fear in his stomach. "Then, we have to be ready. We have to be smarter than them." She looked at him, and for a moment, her expression softened. "You are brave, human. Not like the others. I trust you." Ethan felt a surge of emotion. Her trust meant more to him than he could say. "I trust you too," he whispered. They set up a small camp for the night, using rocks for shelter and whatever supplies Ethan could salvage from his pack. He kept a small fire going, careful not to make too much smoke. Leora sat beside him, her eyes reflecting the flames. She did not speak aloud, but her presence was comforting. "Why did you leave your world?" Ethan asked after a while, curiosity breaking the silence. Leora hesitated, then images formed in his mind. He saw her city, floating high above the ground, shining with crystal towers and lights that pulsed like living stars. He saw her people, tall and graceful, moving with purpose and precision. And then he saw her alone, leaving the city in a small ship, her eyes filled with determination and fear. "I could not stay," she said finally. "Something was coming. Something my people could not face. I had to find answers. And perhaps, allies." Ethan felt a chill. "Allies? You mean humans?" "Perhaps," she replied. "Or perhaps someone else. I do not know yet." He nodded slowly. He understood her need to leave, though he could not imagine leaving everything he knew behind. "I am glad you found me," he said quietly. Her eyes met his. "And I am glad I found you." For a moment, the world felt still. They were two beings from different worlds, connected by something neither fully understood. And yet, despite the danger, there was a bond forming between them. A bond that could not be broken by distance or fear. But as night deepened, the wind brought a new sound. Far away, Ethan could hear engines, soft at first, then louder as they approached. He tensed, realizing the patrols had found their trail. "We must move," Leora said, her voice urgent in his mind. She lifted into the air, her glowing form moving with speed that made Ethan dizzy. He followed as best he could, leaping over rocks and keeping pace. The patrol ships descended on the valley below, scanning for movement. Ethan felt fear rising, but he pushed it down. He had to focus. He had to protect Leora. They reached a narrow cave system that twisted deep into the plateau. Leora led the way, and Ethan followed, panting and exhausted. The patrol ships tried to follow, but the entrance was too small for them to enter. Ethan realized they had a small advantage, and he silently thanked her for guiding them. Inside the cave, the air was cool and damp. Ethan set down his pack and tried to catch his breath. Leora hovered beside him, her eyes scanning the darkness. "We are safe for now," she said. "But not for long." Ethan nodded. "We need a plan. We can't keep running forever." She tilted her head, thinking. "Then, we must find a way to communicate with your people. If they understand that I am not a threat, perhaps we can gain allies." He frowned. "And if they do not understand?" She looked at him, her violet eyes serious. "Then we fight. Together." The words made Ethan's chest tighten. He had never imagined fighting alongside an alien, And yet, with her by his side, he felt stronger than he ever had. He could face the danger, because he knew he was not alone. They spent the night in the cave, taking turns keeping watch. Ethan tried to rest, but his mind kept returning to thoughts of Leora. He wondered what her life had been like, what she had seen, and what she hoped for. He also thought about the patrols, the humans, and the fragile line between trust and conflict. By morning, Ethan felt a new determination. He had always wanted to explore the stars, but now he realized his mission had changed. He was not just an engineer or a human explorer. He was a protector. He had to protect Leora, and in doing so, he might protect both their worlds. They moved carefully through the canyon again, avoiding open areas and using the terrain to hide their movements. Leora's senses guided them, and Ethan followed, learning to trust her instincts. It was difficult at first, but he began to understand her in ways he could not explain. As they rested near a small stream, Ethan watched Leora drink from the clear water, her form reflected in the surface, shimmering with violet light. He felt a strange mix of awe and tenderness. I have never met anyone like her, he thought. She seemed to sense his thoughts. And I have never met anyone like you, she said softly. Ethan smiled, feeling warmth spread through him. Despite the fear, despite the danger, he felt hope. For the first time, he realized that connection could be a strength, not just a risk. They continued their journey, moving from shadow to shadow, avoiding detection. Along the way, Ethan began to notice small details: how Leora reacted to sounds, how she seemed to sense danger before it arrived. He learned to move with her, to trust her guidance, and to rely on the bond that was growing between them. Days passed, and the world around them remained harsh and unforgiving. But they found moments of peace, quiet valleys, glowing plants, streams of clear water. In those moments, they talked, shared stories, and learned about each other. Ethan told Leora about life on Earth, about small towns, about family and friends. She told him about her city, her people, and the strange wonders of her world. Through it all, the bond between them grew stronger. It was no longer just curiosity or necessity. It was something deeper, something neither fully understood. And yet, both of them knew that this bond was dangerous. We must be careful, Leora said one evening, as they rested on a high cliff overlooking the planet. Our connection, if discovered, could start a war. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. I know, but I cannot ignore what I feel, and I will not leave you. She reached out, touching his hand. The warmth spread through him, calming his fears. Then we will face whatever comes together. As the sun set behind the jagged horizon, Ethan felt a mix of fear and hope. Danger was near, and their journey had only just begun. But for the first time, he understood that connection could be a power stronger than any weapon. And with Leora by his side, he was ready to face the unknown. Ethan and Leora had been moving for days through the rocky canyons and valleys of the planet. Each night, they found small caves or overhangs to shelter in. Each day, they kept to the shadows, avoiding patrols and alien scanning devices. But even in the safety of the dark, Ethan felt the tension pressing on them. He could sense it in Leora, too. Something is coming, she said one morning as they climbed over a ridge. Her violet eyes scanned the horizon. Not just the patrols. Something bigger. Ethan frowned. Bigger? What do you mean? She hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. My people. They are preparing. Something about us being here has been noticed. They will act soon. Ethan's stomach tightened. He had expected the patrols to continue searching, but he hadn't imagined an organized response from her entire species. Do you mean a war? He asked quietly. Leora nodded. If they discover our connection, yes, they will see it as a betrayal. Ethan felt a cold knot of fear. He looked at her, remembering the quiet moments they had shared, the trust that had grown between them. "We can't let that happen," he said firmly. "We have to find a way to stop it." She shook her head. "We may not be able to stop it, but we can try." They moved cautiously through the rocky valleys, relying on Leora's instincts and knowledge. Ethan had begun to notice how her abilities went beyond what he had first understood. She could sense danger before it arrived, predict movement, and communicate without words. Each time she did, he felt their connection strengthen. But he also realized that every shared thought, every emotion, could be discovered by those who were looking for them. As evening approached, they found a small plateau that overlooked a valley filled with strange, glowing vegetation. Ethan looked around, trying to find a place to rest for the night. Leora hovered nearby, scanning the valley. "Do you think we'll be safe here?" Ethan asked. She shook her head. "No place is completely safe. But this spot is hidden. It is enough for tonight." They set up a small camp, using rocks and her light to create a faint glow that would not attract attention. Ethan worked quickly, checking his sensors and making sure they had enough water and supplies to last the night. Leora watched, occasionally moving closer to offer silent advice. As darkness fell, Ethan finally allowed himself a moment to rest. He looked at Leora, her violet eyes reflecting the dim light of the glowing plants. "I've never met anyone like you," he said softly. She tilted her head, as if studying him. "And I have never met anyone like you. You are different, brave, and yet careful, strong, and yet kind." Ethan smiled, feeling warmth in his chest. I think I'm starting to understand you. But there's still so much I don't know." She floated closer. "And you may never fully know. But that does not matter. What matters is that we trust each other." Their conversation was interrupted by a faint vibration in the ground. Ethan stiffened. "Patrols?" he whispered. Leora shook her head. Suddenly, a loud roar echoed across the valley. Ethan's sensors went wild. He saw movement on the horizon ships unlike any he had seen before. They were massive, far larger than patrols, and their energy signatures were strong and dangerous. "They're here," Leora said, her voice tense in his mind. "They know we are here." Ethan felt fear rise in him, but he pushed it down. "We have to fight, or at least survive." The ships descended quickly, and beams of energy began striking the valley below. Rocks exploded, and the glowing plants were set ablaze. Ethan grabbed Leora's hand, and they ran toward a narrow canyon that Leora had noticed earlier. The ships tried to follow, but the canyon was too narrow for them to enter. Inside the canyon, Ethan and Leora moved as fast as they could. The air was thick with dust and smoke. He could feel the heat of the energy beams and hear the roar of engines above them. Leora's glowing form led the way, guiding them through twists and turns that even Ethan could barely follow. Finally, they reached a small cave at the end of the canyon. Ethan collapsed against the wall, panting. Leora floated beside him, her eyes scanning the entrance. "They will not give up easily," she said. Ethan nodded. "We need a plan." Leora's violet eyes softened. "Then we make a stand. Together." Over the next few hours, they prepared. Ethan used what supplies he had to reinforce the cave entrance, setting up small barriers and traps. Leora used her abilities to create energy shields that could absorb some of the attacks. They worked silently, knowing that the slightest mistake could reveal their location. As night fell, the ships returned. This time, they were joined by smaller craft, scouts searching for movement. Ethan and Leora waited, hidden in the shadows, their hearts pounding. Suddenly, one of the scouts hovered near the cave entrance. Ethan held his breath, trying to remain still. The scout's sensors swept the area, and he could feel Leora tense beside him. "Now," she whispered in his mind. Ethan activated one of the traps. A small rock exploded outward, triggering a bright flash. The scout was momentarily blinded, and the main ship above fired a warning beam. Ethan grabbed Leora's hand, and they ran deeper into the cave. The main ship's engines roared above them. The ground shook as energy blasts hit the canyon walls. Ethan could feel the cave trembling. "We can't stay here much longer," he said, fear rising in his chest. Leora nodded. "We must find another way. A path that will take us closer to allies, or at least somewhere they cannot reach." They moved deeper into the cave system, the tunnels twisting and turning. Ethan relied on Leora's guidance, though he had begun to notice her hesitation. She seemed uncertain at times, as if even she did not know where the safest path was. Hours passed, and finally, they reached an opening that led to a hidden valley. It was larger than any place they had seen, filled with strange plants and natural shelters. Ethan could see a small stream running through it. "This will work," he said, relieved. "We can rest here, at least for a while." Leora hovered above the valley, scanning the area. "It is hidden, but not safe. We must be careful." Ethan nodded, setting up a small camp near the stream. As they rested, he thought about what had happened. The attack had been sudden and violent. It was clear that Leora's people were preparing for conflict. And now, he realized, their connection was the reason. If they were discovered, it could trigger a war far larger than either of them wanted. "We need help," he said softly. "We can't do this alone." Leora's eyes met his. "Then, we must find allies. But we must be smart. One mistake could be fatal." Over the next few days, they moved cautiously through the hidden valley, using the terrain to hide their movements. Ethan tried to come up with a plan. He could send a message to the human command, but he worried they would not understand. Leora's people were advanced and proud, and any sign of their bond could be seen as a threat. One evening, as the sun set behind the cliffs, Ethan and Leora sat by the stream. The water reflected the fading light, and for a moment, the world seemed calm. "I don't know if we can stop what's coming," Ethan admitted. "But I do know I won't leave you. No matter what." Leora reached out, touching his hand. The warmth spread through him, and he felt strength he did not know he had. "And I will not leave you," she replied. "Together, we will face what comes." They spent the night planning, thinking about how to survive and how to reach people who might help. Ethan realized that their journey was no longer just about running. It was about strategy, about building alliances, about showing that connection between their species could mean more than conflict. But as the stars shone above them, Ethan could not shake the feeling that the war was already beginning. Every patrol, every ship, every decision could lead to disaster. And yet, in the midst of fear and danger, he felt something stronger than fear. He felt hope and the bond that had grown between him and Leora. They had survived so far. They had learned to trust each other. And now, more than ever, they had to prepare for what was coming. The danger was real, and the cost could be high. But together, they could face it. Together, they might even prevent the war that seemed inevitable. And with that thought, Ethan and Leora settled for the night, holding on to each other and the fragile hope that love, trust, and courage could be enough to survive the storm that was approaching. The sun had just begun to rise over the jagged cliffs, casting long shadows across the hidden valley where Ethan and Leora had taken shelter. The night had been restless, filled with dreams that carried the fear of what was coming. Every sound outside made Ethan tense. He could feel the presence of danger even before it arrived. Leora hovered beside him, her violet eyes scanning the horizon. "They are coming," she said softly in his mind. "My people have found us." Ethan swallowed hard. "Then we have to act," he said. "We can't wait for them to strike." She nodded. "Yes, but we must be careful." They moved quickly through the valley, using the thick plants and natural rock formations to hide their path. Ethan carried what supplies he could, checking his sensors for signs of movement. The readings were clear. Ships were approaching, faster and more numerous than before. The patrols had been replaced by what seemed like a full-scale force. "I don't know if we can stop them," Ethan admitted. "But we have to try." Leora touched his arm. "Together, we are stronger than you think." They found a narrow canyon that led to a series of tunnels. Ethan followed Leora, grateful for her guidance. Her knowledge of the terrain was unmatched, and he realized that without her, he would have been lost long ago. As they moved, Ethan thought about what they had accomplished so far. They had escaped patrols, avoided capture, and survived attacks that would have killed most humans. But the scale of the threat now was different. It was no longer a few ships or a single squadron. It was a force that could destroy them if they were not careful. "We must create a signal," Ethan said suddenly. "Something to show your people and mine that we mean no harm, that we are not enemies." Leora considered this. "It is dangerous. If it fails, it will only make them angrier." "I know," Ethan said, "but it is our best chance." They worked together, using Ethan's technical skills and Leora's alien abilities. She shaped energy into patterns he could understand, and he used his equipment to amplify it. Together, they created a signal that pulsed across the valley and into the sky, a combination of light and energy that spoke not with words, but with intent. Hours passed, and finally, a response came. Small ships from her people approached, hovering carefully. On the human side, a communication array picked up the signal, and Ethan knew that help might be on the way. "It is working," Leora whispered, but their relief was short-lived. From the cliffs above, a larger force descended, ships that were clearly war-ready, carrying weapons far beyond anything Ethan had seen. These were not patrols. These were forces sent to punish them for defying orders. Ethan looked at Leora. "We have to hold them off until help arrives," he said. She nodded. "Then we fight together." They moved to a small open space in the valley, creating barriers from rocks and energy shields. Ethan used his technical tools to set up traps, while Leora generated waves of energy that could repel attacks. The first wave of ships fired, and the ground shook from the impact. Ethan ducked behind a rock, feeling the heat and vibration. Leora hovered above him, her eyes glowing brighter. She directed the energy shields, absorbing the blasts and protecting them from destruction. Ethan marveled at her power, but he also knew how dangerous it was. One misstep could collapse the shields, leaving them exposed. The attackers pressed forward, firing relentlessly. Ethan and Leora moved in perfect coordination. He set off traps that sent waves of energy at the advancing ships, while she used her abilities to create illusions that confused the enemy. For a moment, it seemed like they could hold the line. But then a massive ship descended, larger than the others, and directly aimed at them. Ethan's sensors screamed danger. "We cannot stop that alone," he thought. Leora sensed it too. "We must focus on reaching the others. I can distract the ship while you signal for help." Ethan hesitated. "Alone? That's too dangerous." She smiled faintly. "I trust you to survive, and you must trust me to protect you." With that, she rose into the air, glowing with energy, and drew the massive ship's attention. Beams of light struck her shields, and Ethan could see the strain on her face. He felt a pang of fear, but he forced himself to act. He activated the communication device, sending a pulse that could be detected by both human and alien forces. A message of peace and warning that only someone with understanding could recognize. Moments stretched like hours. Ethan watched Leora fight, her energy flashing in brilliant patterns that held the massive ship at bay. The ground shook, rocks fell, and dust filled the air. He could hear her thoughts reaching out to him, urging him to stay focused, to continue the signal. Finally, help arrived. Ships from her people and humans appeared on the horizon, responding to the signal. They did not attack each other. Instead, they approached cautiously, scanning the battlefield. Ethan felt a rush of relief. They were not alone anymore. Leora, still glowing and strong, directed the remaining attacking ships into traps and energy barriers. One by one, the enemy ships were forced to retreat or surrender. The massive ship faltered and withdrew. Unable to withstand her power, combined with Ethan's strategic traps. When the dust settled, Ethan collapsed to the ground, exhausted. Leora floated down beside him, her glow dimming to a gentle light. "We did it," she said, softly. Ethan looked at her, feeling relief, awe, and something deeper. "We did it together," he said. But the victory was fragile. Leaders from both sides arrived shortly after, and the tension was immediate. Humans and aliens eyed each other warily. Ethan knew that their actions could be misunderstood, their connection seen as a threat rather than a bridge. "We must explain," Leora said, sensing his concern. Ethan nodded. Together, they stepped forward, showing their unity. They demonstrated the signal they had created, explaining in simple terms that it was meant to prevent conflict, not start it. Slowly, the leaders began to understand. There was hesitation, but the recognition of their courage and trust began to calm the situation. Days passed, and the valley became a meeting place for dialogue. Humans and aliens cautiously exchanged information, learning from each other. Ethan and Leora worked as intermediaries, their connection a symbol that trust could exist between worlds. Through it all, their bond grew stronger. They shared quiet moments away from the leaders, talking and laughing, learning more about each other. Ethan learned the beauty of her world, the history of her people, and the reasons she had left. Leora learned about humanity, about courage, and the strength of trust. One evening, as the sun set, painting the sky with red and gold, Ethan and Leora sat together on a cliff overlooking the valley. "We did it," Ethan said quietly. "We actually stopped a war before it started." Leora smiled, her violet eyes reflecting the fading light. "Yes, but there will always be challenges. We must be ready." Ethan reached for her hand. "No matter what comes, we face it together." She touched his hand, her energy gentle and warm. Together, for the first time, Ethan felt a sense of peace. The danger was not gone, and the future remained uncertain. But in that moment, he knew they had achieved something extraordinary. Two beings from different worlds, connected by trust, courage, and something more, had prevented a war. As the stars appeared above, Ethan realized that love and connection were stronger than fear and conflict. He had always dreamed of the stars, but now he understood something deeper. Humanity was not just explorers or engineers. Humans were capable of courage, empathy, and bonds that could change the course of entire worlds. Leora leaned closer, resting her head against his shoulder. Ethan felt a warmth spread through him, a quiet strength. Together, they looked at the horizon, knowing that whatever challenges came next, they would face them side by side. And for the first time, Ethan felt that love could truly be a force stronger than any weapon, stronger than fear, and powerful enough to prevent war. The valley was quiet, the glowing plants casting gentle light, and the night wind whispered through the cliffs. The threat was not gone, but hope had been born. Ethan and Leora, human and alien, had shown that connection could transcend worlds, and that trust could change the fate of many. Together, they had faced danger, stood against war, and discovered something extraordinary, that love, courage, and unity could truly shape the universe. As they held each other under the stars, neither spoke. Words were not needed. They had survived, they had fought, and they had changed the course of history. And in the quiet peace of the hidden valley, they knew one thing with certainty. Together, they could face anything.